The number is $2 million. Not because some financial planner invented it to justify charging you more. Not because your generation spends too much money on things you don't need. 2 million because, and I read the actual underlying data on this, 4 separate structural forces converged at exactly the wrong time for exactly the wrong generation. And the math that results from running those 4 forces honestly outputs approximately $2 million. Your parents didn't need that number because they had an entirely different set of inputs. The system did the heavy lifting for them. For you, the system handed you a blank spreadsheet, a complicated story about index funds, and said, good luck. Was their $500,000 actually enough? Let's pull that thread. Here's what this video is actually about. Not the gap, but the mechanism. I'm going to show you what's driving the retirement number, where each component comes from, why the standard max your 401k and chill advice was designed for a world that ended around 1984, and more specifically, why the people who retired on 500,000 didn't actually retire on 500,000. They just didn't know about the other accounts. The magic number for a comfortable retirement is now $1.46 million, according to Northwestern Mutual's 2026 Planning and Progress Study. That's the average American's estimate. The new magic number reflects a convergence of factors from persistent inflation and longer life expectancies to uncertainty about the future of Social Security, said John Roberts, Chief Field Officer at Northwestern Mutual, for Millennials specifically. A 2024 YouGov survey revealed that the magic number to quit working for good is somewhere between $1 million and $2 million. Financial experts suggest that, depending on various economic factors, including inflation, millennials may need between $3 million and $4 million to ensure a comfortable retirement. And yet, 65% of non-retired adults say their retirement savings are not on track. The most prevalent financial anxiety in the Federal Reserve's annual survey. The central metaphor for this whole video is a 3-legged stool. Your parents' retirement sat on 3 legs. Leg 1, a pension, a guaranteed, employer-funded monthly check for life. No market risk, no fund selection, no chance it ran out because the S&P had a bad year. Your employer carried the investment risk every year until you and potentially your spouse were dead. Leg 2, Social Security, fully funded, politically untouchable, and designed to replace roughly 40% of your pre-retirement income as a guaranteed floor. Leg 3, personal savings. And this was supposed to be the bonus leg. The lake house money, the supplement. The system was designed to be stable at any angle because 2 of the 3 legs were guaranteed income streams that did not depend on market performance. You were handed 1 leg, the savings leg, and were told to build a stool out of it while also paying off student debt, buying into a housing market that has priced out the middle class, and watching 2 of the original 3 legs get removed over 40 years of policy decisions that mostly happened before you could vote. Every section of this video removes another leg from the stool your generation was supposed to inherit. By the end, I'll show you what the stool actually needs to look like now and why it costs $2 million to build. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you the arithmetic that makes the $2 million number unavoidable, and specifically how the 4% rule that every financial planner still uses was calibrated for a world where people died before their 90s and bonds paid 7%. But first, let me start with the force that people most consistently underestimate. In 1980, 38% of private sector workers in America had a defined benefit pension. Today, that number is approximately 15%. A pension is not complicated. You work for a company for 30 years, the company promises you a monthly check for the rest of your life. You don't manage investments, you don't pick funds. You don't pray the market is up when you happen to retire at 62 versus 63. Your employer carries the risk. Your employer funds the plan. In 2023, defined contribution plans had 93.4 million participants in the private sector, while defined benefit plans had 11.1 million. Until 1984, defined benefit plans had more active participants than defined contribution plans. The crossover happened in 1984. Most millennials' parents were in their early 30s. The shift happened in real time, visible in plain data, and almost no one who could have pushed back politically did anything about it. Corporations transferred the entire investment risk of retirement off their balance sheets and onto individual workers. And the vehicle they used was a tax code provision that a benefit consultant named Ted Benna repurposed in 1981. Ted Benna, the universally acknowledged father of the 401k, has publicly called his creation a monster that should be blown up. This is the architect of the system, the man who designed it, calling it a monster. That's not a critic from the outside. That's the inventor at a press conference saying he maybe should have thought harder about the second order effects. Here's the reversal you need to sit with. You think the problem is that you're not saving enough. The story you've been told is behavioral. Spend less, save more, start earlier. But the actual problem is structural. The pension collapse transferred approximately $20,000 to $50,000 per year in guaranteed income off corporate balance sheets and onto individual workers, who were then expected to recreate that income through personal investment returns. In 1980, a benefit consultant working on revamping a bank's cash bonus plan had the idea of using an obscure provision in the tax code for deferred compensation. Though 401ks took off in the early 80s, Congress did not intend for them to replace traditional pensions as a primary retirement vehicle, and 401ks are poorly designed for this role. Now here's what the pension was actually worth, financially, in terms you can model. Assume your father's employer-funded pension paid him $18,000 a year, starting at 65, guaranteed for life. To replicate that guaranteed income stream out of a personal investment portfolio at a 3.5% withdrawal rate, you would need to have approximately $514,000 saved purely to cover what the pension used to provide. And that $500,000 needed to be built by you from scratch while also building the rest of your retirement. The pension didn't disappear. It was replaced by a gap of $500,000 that someone now has to fill, and that someone is you. Now add the student loan overhang. As of January 2025, the country's total student loan debt was approximately $1.693 trillion. Just under 47% of that debt belongs to millennials, with an average balance of $40,438. Research from JP Morgan and the Employee Benefit Research Institute found that when student loan repayments started, 25% of borrowers decreased their 401k contributions by a median rate of 2.7 percentage points. Not a rounding error. A structural drain on the compounding window, the years between 25 and 40, when every dollar saved has the most time to grow. Here's what that actually costs in retirement terms. $40,000 in student debt paid off over 10 years at $400 per month. If that same $400 per month had instead gone into an index fund starting at age 25 at 7% average annual return, for 40 years to retirement, it would be worth over $1 million at 65. Not $40,000 in deferred savings, $1 million in lost compounding. The debt that got you the degree, that got you the job that was supposed to fund the stool, it may cost you $1 million at retirement, and the pension leg of the stool is already gone. Stay with me, because this next part is the one that most people in their 30s and 40s are genuinely not accounting for in their numbers. A financial planner sits down with a 38-year-old millennial client and says, "You're doing great. You have your 401k, you're saving 13%, you're on track." The client looks at the projection showing $850,000 at 65 and asks, "Is that enough?" The planner pulls up a chart from 2003 and says, "Historically speaking, yes." The client nods. The planner charges $180 an hour for this conversation. Everyone feels better. Nothing has been fixed. In 2002, Fidelity published its first retiree healthcare cost estimate. The projection, $80,000. That was the total expected out-of-pocket healthcare spend for an average 65-year-old throughout retirement after Medicare. People added it to the spreadsheet, marked it done. 23 years later, Fidelity's 2025 annual retiree healthcare cost estimate reveals that a 65-year-old retiring in 2025 can expect to spend an average of $172,500 in healthcare and medical expenses throughout retirement. This represents a more than 4% increase over 2024 and continues the general upward trajectory of projected health-related expenses since Fidelity's inaugural $80,000 estimate in 2002. That's more than double in 23 years, and this is for one person, and it doesn't include long-term care. Healthcare costs don't increase linearly, they accelerate. While general inflation typically runs around 3% annually, healthcare costs consistently rise 5 to 6% each year. This means healthcare inflation outpaces general inflation by 1.5 to 2 times, creating a compounding effect that can devastate unprepared retirees' budgets. What that math means for a millennial retiring in 2045, $172,500 in today's healthcare costs, compounded at 5% for 20 years, is approximately $458,000. That is the expected healthcare bill for one person in nominal $2045, after Medicare, before long-term care. 69% of people turning 65 today will need some form of long-term care during their lifetime. The average retirement age in America is 62, which means most retirees spend 3 years without Medicare coverage. During those 3 years, if you're not on an employer's plan, you're paying COBRA premiums or marketplace premiums, and COBRA for a family can run $1,500 to $2,000 per month. That's up to $24,000 a year to simply not be uninsured in your early 60s. By the way, hit subscribe if you like the content. Otherwise, YouTube's algorithm may never show you my videos again. There's a story I think about that my fiscal lawyer shared with me once, reviewing an estate for a family in transition. A retired couple, both late 60s, had done everything right, maxed their 401ks, paid off the house, had $800,000 invested. Then the husband was diagnosed with a progressive neurological condition at 71, home health aid, $23 an hour, 8 hours a day. That's approximately $58,000 a year. Not covered by Medicare. Their $800,000 combined with his Social Security and her part-time work lasted about 11 years under that drain. She outlived the money by 4 years. She went back to work at 78, not as a hobby, as a financial necessity. 1 in 5 Americans say they've never considered healthcare needs during retirement. Among Generation X, the people approaching retirement right now, that number climbs to 1 in 4. Meanwhile, 37% of Americans plan to rely on Medicare to cover healthcare costs in retirement. Medicare has significant gaps people don't see until they're already in the system. It doesn't cover most dental work. It doesn't cover most vision care. It doesn't cover hearing aids, which cost between $1,000 and $7,000 per device and need replacement every 3 to 5 years. Unlike your parents' generation, you won't likely have access to employer or union-sponsored retiree health benefits. The healthcare leg of the stool for millennials is almost entirely self-funded. Knowing that number and actually building a financial system around it are two very different things. I built a digital book called The Exit Code, 8 chapters, based on 50 years of actual retirement data specifically because that gap exists. One of those chapters breaks down what I call the $14,000 invisible bill, the specific average annual out-of-pocket healthcare costs that quietly destroys the first years of early retirement for people who didn't plan for the insurance gap before Medicare kicks in. Another chapter covers the dynamic withdrawal method, the flexible, math-based replacement for the outdated 4% rule that adjusts for sequence of returns risk, which Morningstar identified in 2025 as the single biggest mathematical threat to any retirement withdrawal plan. The whole thing is a mathematical framework built on data, not opinion. It's available for less than one dinner out through the link in the description. Now, back to the stool. Because the third leg is about to take a structural hit that has a government-issued countdown clock attached to it. Social Security is on track to deplete its trust funds by 2034, 1 year sooner than previously forecast, when the federal retirement program will be required to cut monthly benefits by about 20%. And then, in August 2025, the Social Security Chief Actuary released a supplemental analysis. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act signed by the President on July 4th, 2025, will advance trust fund depletion to 2032. The window just moved by a year in 3 months. If Congress does not overhaul financing, automatic cuts will slash Social Security benefits by 23% in 2033, according to the latest trustees report. The current average Social Security benefit for a retiree stands at $1,976, which means a 19% reduction would take their monthly check down to about $1,600. That's under $20,000 a year. Now, you might be thinking, Congress will fix it. Maybe. In 1960, there were more than 5 workers paying Social Security taxes per beneficiary, but that ratio has dropped to less than 3 to 1. By the middle of the century, it is projected to decline to less than 2.5 to 1. The math is not subtle, and it has been visible in the trustees' reports for 13 consecutive years. The Bipartisan Policy Center noted in 2025 that the scale of the change needed means there is no time to spare, and that larger legislative changes are required with every year Congress doesn't act. The shift away from pensions was also a factor in this retirement confidence gap. Nearly half of retirees surveyed said they receive pension income, while 61% of pre-retirees expected to rely on 401ks, IRAs, or workplace plans as their primary income source. This transition puts more onus on individuals to manage their savings wisely. For millennials born in 1981 to 1996, the full retirement age is 67. If the trust fund depletes in 2032, that's potentially 15 to 35 years before the youngest millennials reach that age, decades during which the system pays at reduced rates. Analysis of data from the University of Michigan Health and Retirement Study found that 1/3 of the peak 65 baby boomers plan to rely on Social Security benefits for at least 90% of their retirement income. When they reach age 70, for boomers who already retired or are close, those 90% become 68% of income overnight. Your generation has time to not make that planning error, but it requires modeling the cut scenario now. Here is where it gets really interesting, because the fourth force ties all of this together into one uncomfortable arithmetic lesson. A financial planner told a client, I'm paraphrasing a category of conversations that happens in thousands of offices across the country. The 4% rule means you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio every year and never run out of money. The client asked, what if I live to 95? The planner said, that's what the 30-year projection covers. The client was 45 at the time. She planned to retire at 60. That's a 35-year retirement. A pause followed. Then the planner said, that's a great point. Let me pull up a different spreadsheet. The different spreadsheet was the same spreadsheet with a different number in one cell. No change to the underlying withdrawal rate. Just hope that the cell in question was conservative enough. The 4% rule was developed in the 90s by financial planner William Bengen based on historical US market data. Back then, bonds paid around 6 to 7%, inflation was tame, and life expectancy was shorter. Under those conditions, a 50-50 stock bond portfolio could reliably sustain 30 years of withdrawals. Here's what the world looks like in 2026. Morningstar's State of Retirement Income Report found that 3.9% is the highest safe starting withdrawal rate for new retirees. Assuming a 40% stock and 60% bond portfolio, a 30-year time horizon, and a 90% probability of not running out of money. People are living longer, meaning a portfolio may need to last 35 to 40 years, not 30. US life expectancy rose to 78.4 years in 2023, according to the CDC, and the US Census Bureau estimates there are now over 100,000 centenarians in the United States as of 2024. With this number projected to keep growing, Morningstar's 2025 research found that retirees who experienced poor returns in the first 5 years and did not adjust their spending were far more likely to go broke. This is sequence of returns risk in action, and it is the single biggest threat to any retirement withdrawal plan, regardless of the starting rate. Despite an impressive average annual return of 9.5% from 1966 to 2000, a retiree following the 4% rule during that era would have run out of money before age 90 because the poor market performance and high inflation in the early years of their retirement significantly depleted their portfolio. And even the strong returns of the 80s and 90s couldn't make up for it. Now let me run the actual arithmetic that produces the $2 million number. A millennial who is 42 today plans to retire at 65 in 2048. They want $60,000 a year in today's purchasing power. Not luxury, not poverty. Approximately the median household income in America, adjusted for 3% annual inflation over 23 years. $60,000 in today's money becomes approximately $120,000 in nominal 2048 terms. Apply the 3.5% withdrawal rate, more realistic than 4% for a 40-year retirement horizon. 120,000 divided by 0.035 equals $3.43 million as the nominal portfolio target. But Social Security provides partial income. Even under the pessimistic scenario where benefits are cut 23% and your projected benefit based on your earnings history was $24,000. In today's dollars, that becomes $18,480 after the cut. In 2048 nominal terms, at 3% inflation compounded 23 years, that's approximately $36,000. Subtract from the income need. Your portfolio needs to generate approximately $84,000 nominal dollars per year. At 3.5%, $2.4 million as your portfolio target. Now, add the healthcare reserve kept separate. Today's $172,500 figure growing at 5% per year for 23 years. $407,000 in nominal 2048 terms, dedicated as a healthcare reserve, not touched for regular withdrawals. Total nominal target, roughly $2.8 million. Back calculate to a 2026 present value target at 3% annual inflation, approximately $1.44 million in today's dollars. That is the $2 million figure, accounting for what you actually need to accumulate between now and then. This is where the title of the video resolves. The $500,000 your parents needed in, say, 1990 or 2005 was a reasonable number for someone who already had leg one, the pension, covering an equivalent of $500 to $600,000 in retirement account value, guaranteed for life, fully employer funded, with zero investment risk. Subtract the pension equivalent value from the $2 million figure. $2 million minus $514,000 equals roughly $1.49 million. Your parents' $500,000 in the context of the full three-legged stool was doing the same work as your $2 million. You're not being asked to save more. You're being asked to replace two legs of the stool that were removed before you started. Here is where I want to introduce a specific scenario I've been tracking through this whole video. His name is Marcus. He's 42. Mid-career, earns $90,000 a year. Has $150,000 in his 401k, no pension, some student loans still outstanding, married, 2 kids. Marcus is doing better than the median millennial by a significant margin. The average 401k balance for millennials was $83,700. According to Fidelity's fourth quarter 2025 analysis of 24.8 million plan participants, Marcus is ahead of that. And he just read an article telling him he needs $2 million to retire, felt like the floor fell out of his stomach, and realized that at his current contribution rate, roughly 13% of salary, including his employer's match, he'll have approximately $850,000 at 65, not $2 million, $850,000. Most advisors who run Marcus's numbers will tell him to max his 401k. The 401k contribution limit for 2026 for individuals is $24,500. Add a Roth IRA for another $7,000 annually. That's $31,500 per year in tax-advantaged retirement contributions. At 7% annual return over 23 years, combined with his existing balance compounding, Marcus gets close to $2.5 million. Problem solved on paper, except $31,500 on a $90,000 gross salary is 35% of gross income. Marcus takes home approximately $62,000 after taxes. $31,500 out of $62,000 take home is 51% of net income going to retirement. He has a mortgage, 2 kids, daycare, a car, and the remnant of a student loan. In the real world, the average 401k savings rate for millennials is 13.5%, including employer contributions. Not 35%, 13.5%. The gap between what Marcus can mathematically do at maximum contribution and what Marcus can realistically sustain month over month is the actual retirement problem for most people. It's not ignorance of the number, it's the friction between the number and the life. Here's what Marcus actually needs to do, and it's not just save more. 3 specific moves, none of which his current advisor has clearly articulated. The first, Marcus needs to build a dedicated healthcare bridge reserve, separate from his investment portfolio. If he retires at 65, his out-of-pocket healthcare exposure between retirement and Medicare eligibility and beyond should be treated as a distinct savings target. In 2026, the most efficient vehicle for this is a health savings account, if he qualifies. One of the most beneficial features of an HSA is its triple tax advantage. Contributions to the account are made pre-tax, withdrawal of funds for qualified expenses is tax-free, and investment growth is also tax-free. No other account in the tax code gives all 3. Fidelity's research finds that just 23% of Americans are contributing to an HSA to prepare for healthcare costs in retirement, and only 15% of those ages 55 to 64 are even enrolled in a health savings account. Among them, over half do not know that an HSA could be utilized as a retirement savings vehicle. Marcus should maximize his HSA contributions, invest them, not hold them in cash, and treat that account as his healthcare-specific retirement reserve. The second move, Marcus needs to stress test his withdrawal rate against sequence of returns risk rather than assuming a flat 4% works forever. If Marcus retires in 2048 with $850,000 and the market drops 30% in 2049 while he's withdrawing 4%, he is pulling 4% from a portfolio that just became $595,000, which means his effective withdrawal rate is 5.7% of a declining base. The mathematical consequence is terminal portfolio erosion. The fix is behavioral as much as financial. Maintain a 1 to 2 year cash reserve that funds withdrawals in down market years without forcing equity sales. Reduce discretionary spending by 10 to 20% when the portfolio drops more than 10%, and only reset withdrawals upward after sustained recovery. This single adjustment, according to Morningstar's 2025 research, adds 3 to 5 years to portfolio survival probability without requiring any additional savings. The third move, Marcus should model 2 Social Security scenarios full benefit and a 23% reduction, and identify the minimum portfolio value he would need to defer Social Security from 67 to 70. Generally, the longer you can wait until age 70 to take Social Security benefits, the more you can collect, assuming you live a long life. Each year of deferral from full retirement age adds approximately 8% to the monthly benefit permanently. 3 years of deferral from 67 to 70 increases the monthly benefit by roughly 24%. If Marcus's projected benefit in today's dollars is $24,000 annually, deferring to 70 brings that to approximately $29,800 annually. In a 23% cut scenario, 23% of $29,800 is $6,854, whereas 23% of $24,000 is $5,520. Deferral doesn't eliminate the cut, but it reduces the real-world dollar impact, and it produces a larger base that qualifies for cost of living adjustments for the rest of his life. To fund the gap between 67 and 70 while not claiming benefits, Marcus needs approximately $72,000 to $90,000 in accessible non-equity assets, a specific pool built deliberately, separate from his long-term investment account. The stool Marcus can build is different from his parents' stool. 2 legs are gone, But a stool built with financial precision on one leg, properly engineered, can hold weight that a carelessly assembled three-legger cannot. The math is not hopeless, it is demanding. 3 practical takeaways from this video, not generic, not save more, calibrated specifically to what I've walked through. 1. Replace the 4% rule with 3 to 3.5% as your personal withdrawal rate assumption. This is not conservative pessimism. It is the current evidence-based rate for a 40-year retirement horizon. The difference between 4% and 3.3% may not sound huge, but over 30 years, it could mean the difference between peace of mind and panic. On a target of $60,000 per year in retirement income, the difference between using 4% and 3.5% means the difference between targeting 1.5 million and targeting $1.71 million. That gap should change what you contribute this year. 2, open an HSA if you are eligible. Invest the balance, do not hold it in cash, and treat it as a healthcare specific retirement account, not a medical spending account. In 2026, the annual contribution limit for a family is approximately $8,300. Invested at 7% annual return over 20 years, that's approximately $353,000 entirely tax-free on contributions, growth, and qualified medical withdrawals. No other vehicle in the current tax code does what an HSA does for retirement healthcare exposure. 3, model the 23% Social Security benefit cut into your retirement plan today. Identify what your monthly cash need is between age 67 and 70 if you're deferring benefits. Build that specific pool, $70,000 to $90,000 in conservative, accessible assets at least 10 years before your planned retirement. If Congress fixes Social Security before your retirement date, you have a liquidity cushion. If they don't, you have a bridge. Either way, you're not improvising with your fixed income floor at 68. The stool your parents sat on was built for them before they started their first job. Yours needs to be built by you on purpose with the actual data, not the mythology of a generation whose retirement was funded, in large part by institutional structures that have since been systematically dismantled. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. And just to close the loop, Social Security's chief actuary confirmed in August 2025 that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act signed on July 4th will advance trust fund depletion to 2032. That's down from 2035 just a year ago. So if you were waiting for the urgency to feel real, that's your number, 2032. And Congress is on it.